Today on CityCast Nashville, we're ringing in the new year with WPLN's This is Nashville host, Khalil Ekulona, and our executive producer, Whitney Pastorek. Together, we're looking ahead to the top news stories we'll be tracking in 2025. We'll discuss when to expect the new transit referendum rollout, what's happening with the East Bank development, and the ongoing conversation around surveillance in Nashville sparked by the debate over license plate readers and Fusus at Metro Council. Plus, we'll chat about what to expect from the upcoming Tennessee legislative session and the key bills to keep an eye on. And while there are no local elections this year in Nashville, there's still plenty to stay engaged with. So with that in mind, each of us shares where we'll be focusing our energy this year. It's Friday, January 3rd. I'm your host, Marie Cecile Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Khalil, welcome to CityCast Nashville.
Hey, it's good to be back. How are you all doing?
Oh, it's always such a pleasure having you and that voice.
And Happy New Year.
Yes, it's 2025, y'all. We're in here.
We made it.
Mm-hmm.
We did it. Yay. All right, well, let's start with the big question on everyone's mind. How do we think the Trump presidency will impact Nashville this year?
Okay, so I've been really giving this idea a lot of thought because post-election, all the way up to the end of the year, a lot of news media outlets, they've been really talking about like preparing people for the worst of times. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but I'm also not saying that that is happening. I'm taking a little bit of a personal philosophy of let me see what happens and get us through. I feel like my thoughts have been evolving on this, but where my thoughts are is that the next 4 years, for some people in the United States, is going to be very arduous and hard times. For other people, it's not necessarily going to be hard times. In my job as host of This is Nashville, knowing that I've got listeners who voted for the administration and those who voted against the administration, how can I guide us through the troubled waters that we're in? Because eventually it's going to be over, and I don't want Nashville or Middle Tennesseans to be rudderless. So I have no idea how it's going to affect or impact Nashville and Middle Tennessee in 2025. I just know things are going to go down.
Yeah. We were fortunate enough to have Representative Afton Bain on the show last month telling us about her grocery tax bill and some of her priorities for the legislative session that begins here in a couple weeks. And something she said was that she wonders if, as Nashvillians, as people who live in the state of Tennessee, if we might be not sheltered from some of the worst ideas that might come out of this presidential administration, but at least it won't perhaps be as jarring for us because we already live under a Republican state government that subscribes to a lot of the policies from things like Project 2025, for example. So Afton's theory was that it might actually be more jarring for people who live in bluer states and that, you know, we've been frogs boiling in this pot of hot water for a while now.
I could see something like that happening. I could also see a point where the Trump administration has a policy that the state legislature, the state legislators, I should say, don't agree with. And there could be some butting of the heads there, you know? Again, I'm not waiting with bated breath, but I'll be waiting with open eyes.
Well, Khalil, one thing I really admire you for is that your show, This is Nashville, brings people together and you provide different perspectives from both sides, from Republicans and Democrats. You have been opening up your phone lines and having people call in. So what are you hearing from both sides?
You know, post-election, election week, we did all live shows, all phone call shows to get people's reactions to what was happening. You know, and I heard a lot of eye-opening things. I'll start on the Democratic side at first. There were a lot of Democrats who were pretty upset and shook and scared and really disappointed and dismayed about how the election played out. But as I said to my colleagues as well, and as I stated earlier, you know, our show is more than just for Democrats, it's for Middle Tennesseans. And so I had a lot of Republicans express how they were happy about the election. But the one thing that I got overwhelmingly was there is more of a need for us to be able to talk to, and here's the kicker, y'all, listen to each other. That is something that really came through. It's something that I felt proud of because we didn't come out and say, hey, we're going to do this show aiming toward these specific types of people. But the fact that, Republicans called in and said, I love the show, I love the places you all do, shows us that we're not as far apart as we may think. I know there's data and I know there's mainstream media that will let us be there, but I actually take phone calls from the people. And the people talk to us and the people send us emails and the people will find me on social media. There's one thing, a young man, his name is Benjamin. He was from Portland, Tennessee. I didn't know there was a Portland, Tennessee, but there is. He's Latino and it's a family of Latino. And he made some points about why he and his family voted for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, really wanting to bring it to a place where people aren't told what to think and feel. And I think that's an argument that both sides toss at each other. Therefore, to me, that argument is actually valid. Instead of telling each other how to think or feel, let's understand how each other thinks, understand why we feel that way, then we can come together. So I do feel there was no gloating. There was no showboating at all. There was an understanding like, hey, this is where we are. What are we going to do for the future?
One thing we like to remind our listeners is that we are a nonpartisan podcast, and something that we're going to really focus on, and Marie and I have talked a lot about this along with the rest of our team, that we need to focus on just these human stories. So to your point, Khalil, instead of talking about how people should be feeling and how people should be acting, we need to just tell the stories of people's lives, of how they are, where they are right now, what they're feeling, what is impacting them, what their hopes are, what their fears are. I think we have to all be able to understand each other to live in a city together. And I think that's a shared goal that we have. Another one of the guests that you have on your show pretty frequently is the mayor, Freddie O'Connell, Mayor Freddie. He's on with you a whole lot more than he's on with us. Trust me. What kinds of questions do listeners typically ask him when he's on? And what do you think their questions are going to be for him in this new year?
Okay, a lot of questions. People ask about some things. Somebody has asked about the sidewalk on their street. People have asked larger questions when Nashville in the late summer, you all did some pretty cool episodes about this. Let's just say the visits we got from some pro-Nazi extremists.
Yes. Our special neo-Nazi tourists who dropped by.
They asked him questions about that and what he was going to do. They ask him a question about anything, and that's what I love about it. And that's why I'm grateful that the mayor did it. It kind of came up as an idea this time last year. New York has the thing where the mayor comes on and takes calls from the people. Why don't we set this up? And I made a phone call. We were thinking about the idea, and we were like, do you think he'll do it? And then I remembered in his inauguration address, he finished with my sign off, which is be good to each other. He finished his inauguration address like that. So I felt, hey, if you're going to use my line, you owe me. And so we called up and we said, hey, come on and do it. And he takes calls from the people. We screen the calls. And I am very adamant to make sure that if you're excited or if you're apoplectic, you have to treat the mayor and his staff with respect because they're human beings and they are doing the best job they could possibly do. So people call to ask about everything. It has been a lot about the transit referendum. It has been a lot about affordable housing. Some of the key issues that have been around for Nashville that will continue to be around as we get closer to, making Nashville a more livable city for everyone.
The difference between your show and our show, Khalil, is that we don't show the mayor as much respect as possibly we could, but he's really salty every time he comes on. We've brought this up with him. It's unclear why. Freddie, I know you're listening. Let's work on that as a goal in 2025, Freddie, this year. Let's less salty when you come on CityCast
How about we
Nashville.
do this? We can set something up. We can do a show where it's like Truth and Reconciliation. I can have Marie and Whitney in here.
That would be great.
You two could be in the studio, the mayor could be in the studio, and we could just work this out.
I would love that.
I
would absolutely love that. Why? And that's your headline. Why does the mayor hate this innocent podcast?
There it is. Salty mayor? Question mark, exclamation
Salty
point.
mayor? Question mark.
I love it.
I listen to that. He better not steal my sign off. Toodles. I say toodles. Once he starts saying toodles, I'm coming for you, Mayor.
I think I stole Khalil's inadvertently because I say y'all take care of each other. But
Well, there
I
you
say
go.
that all the time.
And look, I stole mine from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So
Nice.
it works.
It was that or get home safe.
Get
which
home
is the other
safe
thing I like
while
to
they're
say to
sitting at
people.
home while listening.
Get home safe.
And we are back with Khalil A. Colonna from WPLN's This Is Nashville. Khalil, what stories or issues does This Is Nashville want to focus on this year?
A few things we're going to keep up on. One of our producers, she left. She was with us, Magnolia McKay, brilliant producer. She was really focused a lot on the elders and the aging community and what it's like to age, because it's something that all of us, if we're lucky, get to experience. So we're going to be picking up and doing a series, I believe that's starting in February, a series on that. And she kind of led that efforts and whatnot. She's left the station and the show, but we're holding on to that mantle and we're going to try to do her proud in creating a special series once a month on what aging and that experience is like. Last year, we'd had another monthly series called In My Place, which is about housing and affordable housing and the unhoused community. We're going to pick that up for season 2. We're definitely going to have specialized themed weeks. You can look for, my bosses have given me the green light, so I'm going to do something memorable and crazy during Black History Month.
Nice.
Because I like to do things like that. We're kind of open, but one of the things that we're going to do, we have been opening up the phones and we'll do it more. We are pushing, again, toward that motif of conversation, civil discourse, understanding, and what have you. So that is going to be a big theme of everything that we cover for 2025 this year.
That's great. And I'm glad to hear you say affordable housing, because I think that now that the transit referendum has passed, now that we have chosen how we are going to move in, we can hopefully get to work on the next big pressing issue for the people of Nashville. And then, Maria, I know you had something else locally that we're watching, the East Bank development.
Yes.
Yeah. That's going to be very interesting to pay attention to, because that's an indicator of where the city is going to go, like physically, certain places. I mean, the new stadium and all of this stuff over there. I want to see how things played out. I feel like this is a little bit of a centipede and we've got many more shoes left to drop on it, unfortunately. So it may be a little bit longer before we get any substantial news that we can really bank on and begin to predict the future. But one thing that I am looking forward to in terms of crime and youth, earlier last year, in the middle of last year, the Black Nashville Assembly was able to get past the first ever Office of Youth Safety in any metropolitan government in the country. It's got $1 million budget, and it is going to get rolling out this year. I'm very interested to see what comes out of that and what other future efforts, because a lot of this was led by the youth themselves and the development of this idea and getting it actually codified into local law and local government. Basically, what this is to me is like kids are like, oh, wow, my future is potentially jacked up. I have to work to create an office and a division within my local government to ensure that I have a future. I wonder where else they're looking at in terms of their future, where they'd like to be to impact local politics.
Well, I saw it was a high school, I believe, that the students signed a petition or a vow to not touch guns. And what a concept, to all say that they're against guns and that they promise to make a vow not to touch guns.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm excited. We're going to be talking actually to Council Member at Large, Delisha Porterfield, later this month about that Office of Youth Safety and everything they've got planned for that and the way it should enhance our communities. Something else I'm going to be keeping an eye on at Metro Council, and it's sort of the opposite, perhaps, of this, putting money into something to proactively ensure that kids have other options, that they have third spaces. The flip side of that, I guess, is all this surveillance stuff that's been going down. License plate readers are certainly going to come back this year as they accept bids for who's going to have the contract for those. And then everybody thinks Fusus, this surveillance tech company that allows us to link the cops with private security cameras around town, everybody thinks that's going to make a return. Khalil, what have you heard from your listeners about that conversation surrounding surveillance?
Someone asked the mayor about Fusus. There's some people who called that are support of it. You know, they think it is an actual deterrent to crime. Other people are worried. Some people are against it totally. They're against all surveillance. Some people are for surveillance, and there's other folks in the middle where they are happy that the technology is available and that there's surveillance technologies available, I should say, that could potentially solve or mitigate crimes in their area or community. But they're wary of it getting out of hand. They're wary of it falling into nefarious hands. And look, we see right now, keeping data secure of all types is something that all countries are having problems with. People are very, very guarded about this. Again, this is a conversation that I think needs to be had out loud. So far, we've only been having the conversation as far as podcasts like yours, a show like mine, intrepid journalists throughout the city, and very interested parties. This conversation hasn't spread to the city or region wide yet, and I think it needs to. So we've done a couple of episodes about it. We're going to bring it back up because I think the first episode we did, most people didn't even understand how to pronounce Fusus, let alone what it was. Now more people are have a knowledge of it. But as Whitney said earlier, now that the 2024 general election is over, now that the transit referendum is passed, this is something that needs to be focused on.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a great place where I'm looking forward to trying to hear from lots of different perspectives on the issue, because I also know that there are some people from marginalized communities who are also dealing with the impacts of crime and public safety issues in areas where they live or businesses that they own. And so I think it is, as all things, you were mentioning, Khalil, more complicated than any kind of versus situation. It's not black and white, but obviously, depending on, not to loop back around to the beginning of the conversation, but depending on what this incoming presidential administration does, I think it's going to really color that conversation here in town. What should we expect from the upcoming Tennessee legislative session? I know that ours is a hyper-local podcast. Yours is a hyper-local radio show, but the state capitol is here. And starting January 14th, they're back.
Do you want my cynical answer or my host/journalist answer?
Oh, cynicism always.
Okay, my cynical answer is not much.
Yeah.
My journalist host answer is we'll see. There's some things that I mean, pretty much the same way. I mean, I know the Democrats are interested in raising minimum wage. As you mentioned, Afton Bain, they want to get rid of the grocery tax that's out there, workers' rights, gun safety. These are some of the issues that have constantly been in flux. I think one thing that I think all Tennesseans are going to be interested in is, can you make living in this state much more affordable?
Right. The only thing they've really proposed so far is this voucher nonsense, which purports to maybe make attending a private school more affordable, assuming there is one near you. I have a difficult time being nonpartisan about school vouchers, but it's a concept that Tennesseans of all stripes and persuasions rejected pretty soundly last year, even from within the Republican Legislative Caucus. And Bill Lee is back trying to make it happen again. That's going to be the really interesting fight for me, is can they muscle something across the finish line that teachers and school boards statewide have said, we don't want this.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out.
Well, what's wild to me is that we actually have no elections this year. But that doesn't mean that we can't just disengage and bury our heads in the sand, folks. So how do we still stay politically engaged? Khalil, Whitney, what are places you'll be putting your energy into this year?
What I think it is, and this is me, this is not Khalil speaking for Nashville Public Radio or This is Nashville. What I think we have the opportunity for now, politically in our country, is an evolution of the idea of political party and what it means to us as human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We have the opportunity to do that. You know, I can closely relate to and support some of the, let's say, the tenets of a particular political party. But and I use these words very, very selfishly and pointedly, I'm not going to identify with a political party. My identity and who I am is constantly changing, and that is who I am. I'm not going to reduce myself to be with a political party, because I feel like both of them are in various states of flux. But to go back to a general theme that we're looking at for This Is Nashville, it's opportunity to become more curious, definitely about how maybe local politics works, how civics work, how things can potentially play out, see what's up with the candidates. What are the issues that are most important? It's not about necessarily about messaging and things. It's about talking about things that are important to people, not only now, but will be important to the future. So let's engage in conversation that may be circled around and centered around politics, but the conversations don't have to be political because we're not taking a side. As Whitney said, this is not a versus. This is us being here, and let's understand and explore more. And I think that will create the environment. Again, life doesn't evolve until its environment demands that it does. For a certain percentage of voters, the environment has demanded that people evolve. Now, I think as United States citizens, it is up for all of us to evolve. And let's have conversations to where we can understand what's happening so we can move forward into the future. And I know that's a very long, roundabout way of saying, become more engaged, become more curious, ask questions to people now that you don't have to worry about any particular voting placard on someone's lawn.
I'll go even deeper than that and step up on my soapbox to say that I think one really exciting thing about a year with no elections is that we don't have to think about quote unquote politics this year. We can think about our community. We can think about our neighbors. We can think about ways to make sure that everyone around us is experiencing the same abundance and blessings that many of us are so fortunate to have in our lives. I'm going to look at really direct ways to work within literally just my neighborhood to try to make things better. I'm going to focus my energies places like Trinity Community Commons, which is this amazing decommissioned church that they've turned into a nonprofit that serves meals to neighbors, that has a garden out front, that does classes and provides wraparound services for some of our unhoused neighbors living in the neighborhood. It's a true third space. It's a safe space. They have farmers markets. It's great. And I want to build that. And I want more people to learn about it because I want it to be a place where I can be in community with my neighborhood. I want to focus in my energies on stuff that I can directly impact and control and make better within my own little tiny corner of the world. And I genuinely think that if everybody does that this year, then next year, when it's time to get back to elections, you'll know so much more about your neighbors, so much more about your community. You will have naturally had the kinds of conversations Khalil is talking about because you'll have gotten off your device and walked out your front door and engaged with the world around you. So I think that's my hope. What about you, Marie?
I'm going to focus on small actions of kindness. I have a big old smile and big teeth, big mouth, basically. And I just want to, I do smile at everybody. It's got me in some trouble. And in New York, it definitely did. But here, I just really, really like having conversations and taking the time to talk to strangers in line at the grocery store, the checkout counter, or especially at the YMCA. Everybody that works there is so kind and lovely. And just taking a moment to connect with my neighbors and smiling and just being human. Even if I know somebody, we may not have the same values of things. Like, we can find a way to connect. And I think that I personally am really good at that. And also, I am signing up to learn Spanish.
Oh, nice.
Yes, to connect to a different community here. But I feel as though that's very, very important. And there's lots of places here in Nashville that teach it. And I think that it'll also allow me to meet more people.
And if I may conflate our show with yours, Khalil, I want to encourage our listeners to reach out to us, Nashville@citycast.fm, if there's a conversation that you want to have, if there's a story that you're tracking or are excited about or nervous about. Khalil, how can people do the same with This Is Nashville?
You can find us on Instagram at This Is Nashville. You could find us. You can go to thisisnashville.org. We've got a whole survey form that you could fill out. You could pull up the podcast that tell you certain ways to listen and call in. And yeah, because what you all are doing is really wonderful and it's great. Aww. And we need this. We need to have a healthy ecosystem. We've got the Nashville Scene podcast. We've got Banner and Company. There's a few podcasts where if everybody does it, as you were saying, Marie and Whitney, if everybody does their little thing in their little piece, what they can, then everything does get covered. Do what you're really good at. You all are doing what you're excellent at. And it's important because Nashville is growing a lot. I tell you this, my prediction for this year, a lot of people are going to be paying attention to Nashville for various reasons. They're going to be paying attention for various reasons this year. And part of our job and the honor and the duty that we have is to have conversations about the things that take place here.
Yep.
And it's good. Okay, so I'm serious. We need to get y'all in the studio here. So the next time we do this, we're face to face. Y'all are here.
Sounds like a good deal. Let's do it.
Sounds great. And we'll finally find out why the mayor is so spicy.
We love you, Freddie.
We love you, Freddie.
All right, Khalil, Happy New Year.
Yes.
May this be just the first of many times we get to talk to you.
Yes. Happy New Year to you all. Be safe. Keep up the phenomenal work, okay?
Oh,
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all get home safe.
Toodles. That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Another huge thank you to Khalil for joining us. Our executive producer is Whitney Pasterek. Our producer is Zoe Colkin. Our Hey Nashville newsletter editor is Margaret Kingsbury, and our theme music is by Prof Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Toodles!